Hello and welcome to the Rams Talk Podcast preview show. This week we are talking all things Oxford United. Now, due to scheduling reasons, we are actually doing this prematurely to the fixture. This is actually recorded the Monday prior. So we have got a couple of fixtures in the interim, but I am delighted that I am joined by Simon from the Fence End podcast. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, very well. Yourself?
Yes, not too bad. Not too bad. I mean, really appreciate your assistance because trying to find real good Oxford United fans to come on and talk all things Oxford actually proved a lot more difficult than I thought.
Well, we'll see if it's good or not by the end of it. You might have wished if somebody else had piped up.
No, bless you. No, really appreciate you having you on. And as I say, because of the scheduling, we are talking about this just after the first game. Both teams are coming off a defeat of the opening fixture. I mean, talk me through it. There we go. No, not a problem at all. Tell me about the game of the weekend, the opening fixture, obviously the defeat to Cambridge.
Yeah, it was a bit of a letdown. We'd had a decent pre-season, beaten Swansea and QPR. QPR we beat comprehensively the last Saturday in pre-season, 5-0, and it looked like everything was purring. Everybody was playing really well. And it just didn't quite work on Saturday against Cambridge. Second half was much better. First half, we were just a little bit, just felt overwhelmed by their pressure, and we were making mistakes. We weren't creating anything. It was a bit of a disconnect between. We kind of play with a single player up front, as a proper number 9, and there wasn't the support for him. There wasn't the service for him. And it just fell a little bit flat. In a way, you kind of think, okay, if we'd have gone into that and won comfortably, there's perhaps a little bit of complacency, and the players think we've got this made. Good pre-season, good first game. It might be a little bit of a wake-up call, and it also perhaps shows where we're a little bit weak, where we kind of thought we were, where we needed reinforcements, and it might just make it absolutely clear. Yeah, we do need a little bit more up front. To create that threat.
Yeah, I mean, even our manager, I mean, he did an hour-long interview, and you were one of the clubs he named as one of the dark horses for him, for Paul Warne, across the division. I mean, a lot of shrewd signings in terms of the way you obviously operate, and obviously, I mean, we've taken a factor that with obviously having your previous head of recruitment now at Derby. I mean, it doesn't seem to really affect you much in terms of the signings on paper. I mean, who out the signings were you really impressed with in terms of the transfer business? And obviously it hasn't quite worked out for opening fixture, but you should obviously pick up obviously going forward.
Yeah, it's been... I don't think there's been an absolute standout signing where you kind of think, wow, that's a biggie. That might come between now and the end of the window. But the likes, Jordan Thornley came from Blackpool. He was with us on loan a couple of years ago, played really well when he was with us for 6 months. He's a player that has replaced Stuart Findlay, who's we trailed him for a long time, got him, and it never really worked. So I think Jordan Thornley's an upgrade. Josh McEachran's a local lad, never played for us as a youngster, but he's a fan, and played under Liam Manning at MK Dons, and he's coming in as the deep lying midfielder has allowed Cameron Brannigan to play a little bit further forward, where I think he can be more effective. So I think the McEachran signing has allowed Brannigan to go further forward. That's kind of a positive. Ruben Rodriguez, who's come from Notts County, I think he was only something like second to Kevin De Bruyne in the top 5 divisions for assists and goals or goal involvements. So, he's one that looks like he could be a positive. Mark Harris, who's come in from Cardiff on a free transfer or an undisclosed, looks decent as well. So there's it's almost like you'd look at them and go, they're all sort of 7 or 8 out of 10 signings. There's not been a wow 10 out of 10, but all of the signings have been positive. And then Stanley Mills, who's Danny Mills's lad, came from Everton on loan. I think a lot of Everton fans were expecting him to be around the first team, or if not, a championship loan. So he's one that could, as the season goes on and he plays a bit more, he could well be quite an exciting signing. But at the moment, yeah, I'd give it sort of between 7 and 8 out of 10 in terms of the recruitment. And if we get 1 or 2 more in between now and the end of the window, then, you know, all round, I think a decent window.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Oxford's always one of those clubs, obviously from afar, from obviously a rival club in the league, where they're kind of very similar to like a Brentford in the Championship. They in terms of the transfer business, quite shrewd, quite savvy in the way they pick up certain players that you kind of go, yeah, they were a half decent player in maybe the league below or another league, and you kind of go, we'll snag them in, and then they kind of seem to perform for yourselves, and then obviously you kind of sell them on for a profit. So, I mean, when you look at the signings on paper, it should all seem to blend. But obviously, if football was that easy, I mean, we'd probably be up there in terms of being in charge. I mean, looking at the Cambridge fixture, just as an opening fixture, a little bit more detail. I mean, looking at the possession stats, you absolutely swamped them in terms of possession. 10 shots, 3 on target, though, with 70% possession. That's according to a certain source, no naming any names, Sky. But if you look at the possession stats and obviously the output, was that really where it just didn't get anywhere, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I think it shows where we are a little bit weak is in forward areas. You know, we had possession. We were. The sort of 3 shots on target were decent chances. We didn't make loads of chances. We had, I think, 10 corners as well, and we didn't really do much with those. So it's early days. I think the way that Liam Manning likes to play is one of those sort of high press and lots of possession and that kind of thing. And it will perhaps take a little bit longer to get round to everybody being comfortable with it. Like I say, went to a couple of the pre-seasons and certainly against QPR, everybody looked very comfortable. The local radio was sort of commenting on how it felt like a team that had been, you know, mid-November playing together for a while. Everyone looked comfortable. But, you know, one game you can't sort of say, yeah, everything's fine after one game. Equally, the game against Cambridge, we can't look at it and go, no, it's broken. Let's try something different. It's one game into a 46-game season. It will take a while for it to come together. And again, you know, it's one of the regular things I often say. It's their third division footballers. If they were consistent at the level that they could play and played like that every single game, they wouldn't be in this division. They'd be higher. So it's, you know, there's a little bit of, okay, the next game, we might see them play much better. It might take 2 or 3 games before that happens. We'll just have to see, you know, and keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at probably the expectations for yourself going into this season, I mean, where do you really see a successful season being from obviously a fan's perspective?
I think after sort of the Carl Robinson era, where we had a couple of seasons where we made playoffs, one we made the final and got beat, and then the last season was a real letdown. I think after 3 very good seasons, it was a big drop off, and we were, you know, towards the end of the season still kind of looking at other teams. It wasn't like 4 or 5 games left, oh, we're safe. It really was, you know, very even on the last game of the season. Yes, mathematically we weren't safe, but we were, you know, it was down to the last game. And that's this season, you know, I think we'd like to say, let's be around the playoffs. I think if we don't make the playoffs, but we can see a real progression in terms of the style of play and the recruitment. And we've got 2 or 3 players that Carl Robinson signed on quite long contracts that you're kind of thinking, I'm not sure they're right for us. And if we can sort of clear out the deadwood as well a little bit this season, then, you know, a top half maybe pushing for the playoffs is about where we'd hope to be.
Yeah, I mean, Oxford's is renowned as one of those teams that it's kind of a bogey team for a lot of, especially for teams trying to push for the playoffs. It's kind of a team that you don't really want early on, and blow me down in the first opening fixtures. We've got you got you third. So
Yeah.
Luckily it's at home and not at your place. But I mean, if you look at the fixture a little bit more between the two of us, obviously last year was very, very tricky in terms of coming to yourself. It was very entertaining game, put it that way, when we came to yourselves last. What do you see in terms of in terms of results being this early on in the season? Would you, especially away at Pride Park on a Tuesday evening?
Yeah, it's obviously a tough game. We found that, I think, that we played away in the first game of the season, wasn't it? Last year we were up at your place, and it's one of those situations where a club like that with a decent crowd, if you make a good start, then the crowd will get behind you, and it's going to be tough. Equally, you often find with the sort of the bigger clubs with the bigger crowds, if it's not going right, the crowds can turn. There's that there will be that that negativity that might be around. So I mean, I'll be more than happy with a draw at this point. I'd take that now all day long. And it will be a tough game. I think, like you said earlier, we're a little way off from the game at the moment. And there might be recruitment for both of us between now and then. And League Cup matches and the game on Saturday, we could both be going into it either really on a positive or quite on a downer. So it's tricky. There's always that kind of as well, playing against probably one of the favourites for promotion in yourselves. A little bit of a free hit. You go there, a little bit of pressure off, and the game against Carlisle at home on Saturday is much more of we really need to be getting 3 points there. Derby away and Barnsley away on the following weekend is both games that you're not going to put down 3 points on your betting slip for those.
No, exactly. I mean, when you look at your next two fixtures, as say, by the time this pod goes out, you would have played Bristol City in the Cup, and then obviously, as you alluded to, Carlisle at home. I mean, Bristol City, obviously you could have had a win. You could have had for all we know. So we'll see what happens on Wednesday. But I mean, would you say the Cup's a priority, or would you say that's probably going to be just put out a rotated squad and just see what happens?
I think there'll be a few bits of rotation. Like I say, Mark Harris is the main striker at the moment. I think he'll play to try and get him a goal or get his sharpness and get him going. We've been sort of fairly lucky over the last few years where we've done we've had some good cup nights at the Kassam. Man City a couple of times, Arsenal last season, and we've been all right. We've had one or two cup runs, so it would be nice. But I think the old adage, concentrate on the league this season. And let's see where that takes us.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you got a game against Carlisle at home, that is probably your priority out of the two, and then obviously playing us on the Tuesday. I mean, Carlisle, one of them kind of awkward teams. You never know what you're going to get out of a Carlisle sort of side. But I mean, when you look at yourself at home, who and the way you play are the danger men for yourself that maybe Derby fans need to watch out for?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned Ruben Rodriguez. He's looking decent. We've got a young lad come through the academy, Tyler Goodrum, who's played a lot at the end of last season, and I don't think they're looking to send him out on loan. I think he's going to be a pretty much a sort of a first team regular going into this season. I think he turned 20 today, I think. Yeah, looking at my screen. I remember seeing something on social media that it was his birthday. So at 20, that's a point at which, if he was 17, 18, you might be looking at a local non-league club for a loan. But he did well enough at the end of one of the real bright sparks from last season. And he's He started on Saturday, and I think he'll be a player that will catch the eye. Perhaps not a name you'd necessarily have heard of, as he's a youngster, and it's really only his first. Last season was his first real season, but I think he's a player that could go a long way in the game. And when he plays well, we've played well.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at yourself, I mean, obviously with Oxford and Cambridge, the fixture obviously that undid you the first opening game. I mean, as you say, we've got a couple of danger men to watch out for, but obviously Cambridge managed to get a result against you. I mean, what would you put that down to in terms of what Cambridge offered that maybe Derby could look at and go, we might have to obviously take a leaf out of Cambridge's book?
Yeah, I saw a little sort of one of these sort of heat map things where it showed where their ball possession and ball into box. Everything that we had sort of came from that sort of number 10 role, middle of the pitch and playing balls into the box from there. The Cambridge United were coming in from their wingers. Basically, they got down the side of us and were whipping balls into the box to a good, strong target man, and we struggled a bit with that. So and again, talking about recruitment, I think most of our fans are looking at fullback as potentially where we could look at an upgrade possibly, and that was certainly somewhere on Saturday, or on Saturday we struggled a bit with the pace that they had wide and getting balls into the box. So if you've got quick wingers and a big target man, you might get a little bit of luck.
If I could say James Collins was a target man, I don't know. Wingers. I'll give you wing backs more in our case nowadays. But you actually kind of beat me to my next point. I mean, if I could give you a position or a player that you may be linked with that you could sign right now before our game against the Rams, who would you pick, or what position would you pick that obviously could give you the edge over us?
Yeah, I think we've apparently, according to the media, had a £400,000 bid for Jack Marriott at Fleetwood, and it's that sort of hardened League One, player that's been around, that's done it, that's regularly scored goals, that's going to come in and it's not going to be a shock to him, which you kind of sometimes think if you get a Premier League player on loan and all of a sudden you go into places with all due, I mean, our ground isn't great, but you go into Fleetwood or you go into Cambridge or Stevenage like that, it's not going to be, bloody hell, what have I let myself in for? It's a player, you want a player that's going to hit the ground running and go, yeah, this is my bread and butter. Give me the ball and I'll score. And we've looked, we've needed that for a while. Matt Taylor was that player for us for a couple of seasons. Last season, it didn't work for him and he's left now. But I think a proper goal scoring centre forward would take a bit of the pressure off of Mark Harris. You're not relying on one player to score your goals. So I think that's where we're looking to recruit, and hopefully we'll get that done pretty quickly.
Well, if it is Jack Marriott, I do hope that it's done after our game because it'd just be the football gods, wouldn't it, for a former Derby player to come back to us and score, especially if it could be his debut. We'll wait and see, and we'll see what happens. I will give you the overriding question. What do you think the result will be next Tuesday?
I'm going to hope for a 1-1. Let's go for it. Let's go for a scoring draw. 3 points on the coupon for a scoring draw. Yeah.
Well, I will go. I'll have to back us and say that we'll get a 2-1 win. I don't think it'll be as easy as anything, and hopefully we've put the wrongs to rights against Burton Albion before then. But no, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Appreciate your time, Simon, this evening. If anyone from Oxford is listening in, as I say, we are going to plug your pods throughout the tweets and stuff and throughout the clips. Where can they find
Thank you. At the Fence End Pod.
At the Fence End Pod. So
yeah, the Fence End being the most famous wooden structure in football. Behind our goal. At the car park end.
Brilliant. So, catch them all on the At the Fence End pod. I will be tagging that in to all the clips and all the tweets. So, appreciate you coming on, Simon. If you any Derby fans do want to listen to all our previews, we are following Derby each and every league game this season. So there will be another preview coming out for the next game. Keep an eye out for that, and also our reaction shows on each Sunday at 7:00. And you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and even the live streams on YouTube. They are all at Rams Talk Pod. But appreciate your time, Simon. As I say, we'll hopefully maybe have you on for the return leg if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
How the result goes.
Yeah.
But have a good evening, mate.
And you. Thank you very much. Cheers.